My wife handed me a positive pregnancy test 43 days after my vasectomy. At first, I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She was standing in our kitchen crying happy tears while holding the test in both hands. After 12 years of marriage and 3 years of trying unsuccessfully to have another child, she looked happier than I had seen her in years. The problem was that I had undergone a vasectomy exactly 43 days earlier. She knew that. She drove me to the appointment. She sat beside me during the consultation. She listened as the doctor explained the recovery process. So when she handed me the test, my mind immediately split in two directions. One side wanted to celebrate, the other side couldn't stop doing the math. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the doctor's words. The procedure wasn't supposed to work instantly. The doctor had specifically warned me that it could take time before I was considered sterile. There were follow-up tests scheduled months later. I knew that, but doubt had already entered my head, and once doubt enters, it becomes difficult to remove. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing things I normally wouldn't have noticed. My wife became protective of her phone. She began taking evening walks by herself. She left the room when certain calls came in. None of these things proved anything. But when you're already suspicious, every ordinary action starts looking suspicious. One afternoon, I found myself sitting in my car outside a coffee shop, watching through the window. My wife was inside. She was meeting someone, a man. I had never seen him before. They talked for nearly an hour. Then they hugged before leaving. I felt sick. That evening, I confronted her. She looked genuinely confused. Then she laughed. Not because the situation was funny, because she immediately understood what I was thinking. She explained that the man was a financial advisor. Apparently, she had been meeting him for months. I didn't believe her. Not until she showed me emails, documents, appointment schedules, and business cards. Everything checked out. I felt embarrassed, but only temporarily because a week later, something else happened. A letter arrived in our mailbox. It was addressed to my wife. The return address belonged to a fertility clinic. I stared at the envelope for several seconds. Then I did something I wasn't proud of. I opened it. Inside was an appointment confirmation. The appointment had taken place nearly 6 months earlier, long before my vasectomy, long before the pregnancy. My heart started racing. Why would she be visiting a fertility clinic without telling me? That night, I confronted her again. This time, she became angry. Really angry. She accused me of invading her privacy. She accused me of acting paranoid. Then she locked herself in our bedroom. For 2 days, we barely spoke. On the third day, she finally sat down and told me the truth, or at least what I thought was the truth. She explained that she had secretly visited the clinic because she wanted a second opinion regarding our fertility struggles. She said she didn't tell me because she didn't want to give me false hope. Part of me believed her. Part of me didn't. Then came the ultrasound appointment. I attended every appointment. I wanted to be involved. But during that visit, something unusual happened. The technician looked at the screen for a long time, longer than normal. Then she left the room. A doctor came in. The doctor reviewed the images. Then he asked a question neither of us expected. Has anyone in your family ever had twins? My wife looked shocked. I looked confused. The doctor smiled. We weren't having one baby. We were having two, twin girls. The news should have been the happiest moment of our lives. Instead, it created a new problem. Because that same evening, my wife finally confessed something she had hidden for years. 5 years earlier, after we struggled to conceive, she had secretly frozen several embryos created during fertility treatment. She never told me. At the time, the treatment failed. Or at least that's what we believed. The clinic stored the embryos for future use. Years passed, life got busy, the topic disappeared. Then shortly before my vasectomy, she decided to revisit the idea. She met with specialists, reviewed options, attended consultations. But she insisted she never moved forward without discussing it with me. I wanted to believe her. Then another surprise arrived. A few days later, I received a call from the clinic. The woman on the phone apologized repeatedly. She explained there had been an administrative issue involving patient records. At first, I thought it was routine paperwork. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. They needed us to come in immediately. When we arrived, several administrators were waiting, so was a lawyer. That's when they explained the situation. Several patient files had been mixed during a software migration months earlier. A review had uncovered inconsistencies. One of those inconsistencies involved our case. For several terrifying minutes, I thought they were about to tell us the babies weren't ours. My wife started crying. I could barely breathe. Then the clinic clarified. The embryos were ours. The babies were ours. But another family's embryos had nearly been transferred by mistake during an earlier consultation. The error had been caught before anything happened. The clinic insisted no harm had occurred. Legally, they were probably correct. Emotionally, it was devastating. For weeks afterward, we questioned everything, every appointment, every document, every reassurance. Then another truth surfaced. The clinic wasn't calling because they suddenly became honest. They were calling because a whistleblower inside the company had exposed multiple record-keeping failures. Several lawsuits followed. News stations covered the story. Families demanded answers. The clinic's reputation collapsed. During the investigation, we learned something surprising. My wife's secret meetings with the financial advisor had never been about money. She had been preparing for the possibility of legal action against the clinic. Months before anyone else knew there was a problem, she had already suspected something was wrong. She had been gathering records, saving emails, keeping copies of documents. Not because she was hiding an affair, because she was trying to protect our family. Suddenly, all the suspicious behavior made sense. The phone calls, the meetings, the secrecy, the fertility clinic letters. Everything I interpreted as evidence of betrayal had actually been preparation for a battle I didn't even know existed. 9 months later, our daughters were born healthy. As I held them for the first time, I thought about everything that had happened. The pregnancy test, the doubts, the accusations, the hidden appointments, the clinic investigation, the fear. The truth turned out to be completely different from the story I created in my head, and that was the lesson I carried away from the experience. Sometimes the biggest threat to a marriage isn't betrayal. It's assuming you already know the answer before you've heard the whole story.